Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're interested in creating a better connection between your waist rotation and hip actions and all of the movements that you're doing in Tai Chi, you've come to the right video. In this lesson, I'm going to be teaching the technique of carry tiger to the mountain in the Tai Chi Yang style 108 form. And I'm going to be paying especially close attention to exactly what the waist is doing and what the hips are doing to make the movement happen. If you're new to the channel, I'm Dr. Todd Martin, creator of the Tai Chi Code. Let's go ahead and get started first with a demonstration following apparent close-up and cross hands and moving into carry tiger to the mountain. Before I get too far into describing the specific waist rotations and hip actions, I just want to clarify what the waist is and what the hips are from my perspective and how I use them in the Tai Chi Code. There can be a lot of confusion about what is meant between the hips and the waist and the back. But if we're thinking anatomically, what we really have are three divisions of movement going on, coordinating simultaneously together. First, let's look at the waist, which is this entire section between the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the pelvis. So it's not one line, it's one entire region. And there are two primary sets of muscles that rotate the waist in one direction or the other. One is the external obliques, which lie just under the rib cage here on either side. And then we have the internal obliques, which are deep to the external obliques and run down into the pelvis. And both the external and internal obliques serve to rotate the spine, and they work in opposite directions. So the external obliques turn the body towards the opposite side. The right external obliques rotate the upper waist and the upper torso towards the opposite side. Right external obliques turning the upper waist to the left. Left external obliques turning the waist to the right. The external obliques also have a function in flexing the spine forward. So when I activate my right external obliques, what I'm doing is turning the body to the left and flexing the spine forward. Vice versa for my left external obliques, which turn the body to the right and flex the spine forward. Then we have the internal obliques. The internal obliques are also on either side, left or right, but they turn the body in the opposite direction from the external obliques. The internal obliques on the right turn the body back and to the right. So they're pulling the lumbar spine and pelvis backward and to the right. And the left internal obliques pull the spine back and to the left. Now, like the external obliques that flex the spine forward, the internal obliques flex the lumbar spine upward. And so what they do is essentially pull up on the lumbar spine and the pelvis. And when we think about tucking the pelvis, what we're using is the internal obliques to create that tucking action, pulling up on the pelvis. When we are rotating in Tai Chi, it's not a simple matter of turning to the left or turning to the right. We can either be turning to the left with both the left internal obliques and right external obliques, meaning they're turning in the same direction, or we can be turning to the right with the left external obliques and right internal obliques turning in the same direction, or the internal and external obliques can move in opposite directions on the same side of the body. So I can, in doing this motion, turn the upper waist with the external obliques to the left as I'm turning the pelvis with the internal obliques to the right, creating this action here, which if I face the camera, looks like a straight line because I have two opposing rotations going on at the same time. And then we have our hip actions. We power all of our movements with the hips. And the power is coming primarily from two specific hip actions. One is hip flexion, and the other is hip extension. These help to power the movements, but they also create rotation, just like the upper waist rotation and the lower waist rotation. If we think about it this way, if I use my hip joint on the right and I use the hip flexors to flex the hip in this manner, it has a pulling action, turning the body into that flexing hip. And then the hip extensors, which are in the back, our glutes, do the opposite. They push the body away from the side that they are rotating on. Now let's talk about the idea of these muscles working on only one side at a time when they're active, because this is what's necessary for keeping our body with vertical posture. When we move in a rotational sense with the upper waist, I can go side to side and I stay vertical as I do this. Because as I activate the left external obliques to turn forward, the right external obliques inactivate or deactivate, removing their forward rotation and allowing the rotation from the left. And then I switch. When I activate the external obliques on the right, I am deactivating the external obliques on the left. This is a necessary part of keeping vertical posture, because if we use both at the same time, then we are doubling the forward flexion component and we will get a forward pitch or a forward fall. So in order to maintain vertical posture, we have to be one side or the other. One side has to be full, the other empty, full or empty. If we are full on both sides, we're going to pitch forward because of the forward flexion component of those muscles. With the internal obliques, we also have to work one side at a time. So when we think about tucking the pelvis, I tuck the pelvis only on one side, which roots that leg to the ground and creates the tucking action on that one side, and there is no tucking action on the other side. That helps keep the vertical posture. If we activate both lower abs at the same time, we get over tucked, like a dog tucking its tail. And if we do that while we're standing up, we will get this sort of action and we fall over. So maintaining proper balance means we have to maintain the tuck on one side, not both. When we switch weight from one leg to another leg, we're using that lower abdominal rotation to take the weight off of one leg and put it on the other leg. You can think about your belly button rotating to control this movement. The belly button is reflecting the rotation of the lower abs, either on the left, rooting the left leg, or turn it to the right, rooting the right leg. And it occurs in conjunction with the tucking action on either side at the same time. With the hips, we are also powering with one leg at a time. We're either going to power by extending one hip or flexing one hip. I don't do both at the same time. I don't try to push with my right hip glutes and push with the left hip glutes at the same time, or I will push myself over. And we also don't power by flexing both hips at the same time. If I'm going to power a movement by flexing my right hip, I can't simultaneously actively flex my left hip or I will collapse. So all of these core muscles are used on one side at a time and in conjunction with each other. And what this produces is only 8 specific combinations of movement that involve rotation of the upper waist, rotation of the lower waist, and power of either flexion or extension from one leg or the other leg hip. And those 8 movements correlate with the 8 energies of Tai Chi. And when I teach each of the techniques in Tai Chi, I go through the specific rotations of the waist and hip actions that are creating each movement of the technique, because I believe that every movement in Tai Chi is done by sequencing these 8 combinations together. That is the Tai Chi Code, and that's what I teach on this channel and on my website. As I do Carry Tiger to the Mountain in this video, I'm going to focus in on those because Carry Tiger to the Mountain uses 7 of the 8 energies. So we can really learn from that. So as we go through the Carry Tiger to the Mountain technique, I'm going to do a step-by-step explanation so you can see the visual, and then I'm going to go into the core rotations so you can see what is often invisible. Let's go ahead and get started. That was a bit of a long explanation, but I wanted to do it in this video because in future lessons, I'm going to focus in more on just the step-by-step and put the full core movement discussions over on my website for those who are subscribed to the Tai Chi Code course. So if you do like that sort of explanation, I suggest jumping over there at the end of this lesson and signing up for the Tai Chi Code. Now let's get into the step-by-step portion of Carry Tiger to the Mountain. We're going to begin from a forward-facing position so you can clearly see the pivot. We're coming out of cross hands. And as soon as we place our right foot down in a horse stance, we're going to begin to pivot. And we're going to pivot 90 degrees in on the left foot, and the left arm is going to begin to drop slightly to a roughly horizontal position as I do the pivot. Then we're going to shift our weight fully onto one leg, and the body is going to begin to rotate to a 90-degree facing position relative to where we started. And once we get here, we're going to step out onto the heel in a 45-degree angle stance. So my right foot is angled out 45 degrees. And this is where we're going to begin the brush knee type action, brushing down and then forward. And so it's kind of like a diagonal brush knee. And then from here, we're going to circle the arm back and get into the grasp the sparrow's tail position. and we're doing a diagonal grasp the sparrow's tail. I'll explain step by step in a minute because I'm going to change my orientation so you can see better. So now I'm going to face to the left to begin the pivot so you can see the diagonal brush knee and diagonal grasp the sparrow's tail a little bit more clearly. We pivot in on the left foot. The arms begin to rotate, shift into single leg stance as we continue to turn, and then step out onto the heel with the leg facing out, angled at 45 degrees with the foot. Then we're going to brush down with the right arm and then strike forward as the right arm brushes past the right knee. Now we're going to do diagonal grasp the sparrow's tail, beginning with a slight rotation up of the right arm as there's a slight lean back of the body, and then the arms go forward into the typical grasp the sparrow's tail position. And then we roll back, circle the left hand until it connects with the right wrist. We press forward, push the arms open, push the palms down as we sink back, and then push up and forward, ending diagonal grasp the sparrow's tail. Let's look at the pivoting of the foot close up. We are in a parallel position with both feet, horse stance, and we're going to pivot in on the left heel. So not on the ball, the left heel is going to pivot in. That pivot is made possible by the rotation of the waist and the power of the hips, all working together. So to get this full turnaround, 90 degrees with the left foot, we need to turn both the upper waist on the left and the lower waist or lower abs on the right clockwise, all turning in this direction here. And that is coupled by extending my left hip using the glutes on the left. So all of the three elements of the core are going to be involved in turning the body clockwise from this cross hands position. Upper waist is turning to the right from the external obliques. Lower abs are turning to the right from the internal obliques. So you can think of the belly button turning to the right, and glutes are extending on the left. Now, the lower abs root the side that they're turning towards. So in this case, they're rooting the right leg, removing the root from the left. It's a general rule of thumb that to pivot on the foot, we need to remove the root from that foot. And so that's what we're doing here by turning the lower abs to the right, removing the root and allowing the pivot on the left foot in a safe manner. If we try to pivot on the left foot while keeping a root there, you're going to cause extra torque and twisting of the knee that could cause injury. So we're removing all that weight to the right leg as we do that motion. The left arm is going to drop slightly, as we mentioned before, and then now I'm going to shift my weight to the left leg. So the root is on the right. The root is going to turn back to the left. So belly button turning back to the left, and tuck coming from the right, and now releasing the tuck from the right and putting the tuck on the left as we turn the belly button to the left. So that's what's occurring from the internal obliques or the lower abs from this position. Belly button turning to the left, as the upper abs are going to turn to the right, external obliques turning to the right. And that is what gets me in this position here. First movement. Second movement, I'm going to flex my right hip as I turn the upper waist to the right, lower abs rooting the left. And now to step out onto the right heel, I'm going to turn the upper waist back to the left, and that is what creates the step out onto the heel. I'm going to do that from this position so you can see that better. As I flex my right hip, I'm turning the upper waist to the right and lower abs to the left, rooting the left leg. And then I turn the upper waist back to the left, and that creates the step out onto the heel. Now I'm going to push down, and that's going to involve extending from my glutes on the right as I continue to turn the upper waist to the left and turn the lower abs to the right. That's going to create this sort of blocking down action. We see this in Grasp the Sparrow's tail as well when we're doing the push down and push forward. That's a different technique than those who do the push in that fashion. This is a different movement. It is push, not what this is, which I'll explain later, is press and push. This withdrawing action is press, and then the forward action is push. In the style that I learned, we do two pushes. We do a push down and back, and then a push up and forward. So when we do the brush knee here, we are doing a push down and back, extending the right hip as I turn the upper waist to the left, lower abs to the right. That's what creates this motion. Everything is in continuous rotation. And then we switch the push to the opposite side, now turning the upper waist to the right, lower abs to the left, tucking the pelvis on the left, and then the glutes on the left activate to push forward. So it's two pushes in a row, push from the right hip and then push from the left hip. I'm reaching forward from the upper waist on the left. My pelvis, using the lower abs, is tucked on the left and rotating back to the left. That is creating this straight forward motion of the waist. So it's impossible to visualize the rotation, but if we understand what's going on, we can connect our mind to the rotation, feeling the rotation as we move in a straight line. Now we get into the diagonal Grasp the Sparrow's tail. The first thing that we do is ward off, but it is a very hard to see visually ward off because we're not starting back here for the ward off, we're already here. So I'm going to do the circle of the hand back as I start to rotate the palms like this. That is actually the ward off motion if we understand what ward off is from the core, which means we're powering from extension of the rear hip. I'm turning the lower abs back towards that rear hip, and then I'm going to turn the upper waist back towards that hip, or actually forward, but around towards that rear hip. All three elements of the core going in the same direction, projecting energy off the ground. That turns this motion into this motion. Now I'm going to take both the upper and lower waist and turn them to the right. And then that puts me in the Grasp the Sparrow's tail position here. I have extension from my left glutes, upper waist turning to the right, lower abs turning to the right. Now we're going to roll back. And I know people do roll back in different ways. I believe that the way I'm going to show right here is consistent with the Tai Chi energy of roll back. We're going to roll back like this. So what is that core energy-wise? We flex the right hip, and then we're turning the upper and lower waist into that flexing hip, creating a retreat on a retreat on a retreat all together. Yin yin, yin, all creating a movement that retreats back. A lot of people talk about rollback as in going and turning away from that and moving the arms this way, but that actually isn't 3 yin motions. Doing all 3 movements into the flexing hip is a yin motion. Then we circle the arms by changing the lower ab rotation to the left. I think you can probably see the tucking action happen here on the left. From this motion here, I'm going to tuck on the left, and that begins the circle. And then I'm going to turn the upper waist to the left, and that completes the circle. When I turn the upper waist to the left, the body still turns a bit to the right, and that's because we have the hip flexion of the right hip pulling the body towards the right as we do this motion. So I'm going to turn the upper waist to the left. The body is going to continue turning to the right because of the pull from the hip. Then we're going to press forward. When we press forward, we are turning forward with the upper waist on the left, and we're keeping the root on the left, and we're flexing the left hip. Flexing the left hip. That is the hip energy, but the root maintaining on that leg with the lower ab rotation is what keeps the leg from coming off the ground. But this is a flexion of the hip motion. If I took the lower abs and turned them to the right, that leg would just peel right off the ground because the hip energy is flexion. So here we are. Then we turn the hip energy to extension, pushing the arms open. And then we're going to push back and down. Glutes on the right, upper waist now turning to the left, lower abs turning to the right. So the same action we did before the brush knee, brushing down like that, that is the same motion we're doing here. And then we're reversing it and pushing forward, just like we did in brush knee, but from a different starting position. So now I'm forward on the left upper waist, again, tucked with the left lower waist and extending from the glutes on the left, completing the motion. Now let me go back and go through the core techniques of each one of the movements. The core techniques are the correlation between the core movements and the 8 energies of Tai Chi. I already mentioned a couple of those because they're named explicitly in Grasp the Sparrow's Tail, but now I'm going to name the ones that aren't named explicitly. Beginning from the turnaround, the first thing we are doing is shoulder strike. In shoulder strike, we extend from the glutes on the active leg and we turn the upper and lower waist away from the extending hip. Then we have split. In split, we have flexion of the active hip, turning the upper waist towards the active hip and lower abs or lower waist away from the active hip. So this action here is split. And then when we turn the upper waist back to the left, we now have elbow strike. Elbow strike is flexion of the active hip, upper and lower waist turning away from the active hip. So upper and lower waist turning to the left as the flexed right hip causes the foot to place out at an angle. Remember, the hip flexion creates a rotational power towards that flexing hip. So even though we are turning the upper and lower waist to the left, the hip power creates energy that continues to turn us to the right, completing the step out. So we have shoulder strike, split, elbow strike. And then we have push down and back from the right hip, push forward from the left hip. Push is extension of the active hip, upper waist turning away from the active hip, lower abs turning toward the active hip. Then by turning the upper waist to the left, we get ward off. Turning the upper and lower waist to the right gets shoulder strike. So the grasp the sparrow's tail position here is shoulder strike. Upper and lower waist turning away from the active extending hip. And then we simply flex the right hip, continuing the waist rotation, and that causes us to roll back. For those of you who do roll back in this sort of fashion, that uses an extension from the active hip, turning the upper and lower waist away from that extending hip. So that would be shoulder strike doing that motion, and then we would get into our press. But energetically speaking, that's not a rollback, it is a shoulder strike because we have extension of the hip, which is a yang motion. The yin, yin, and yin motion of rollback is all three yin movements moving into each other and causing the retreat of the body. So I think this is properly considered rollback. And then we turn the lower abs to the left, which turns rollback into split. And then we turn the upper abs to the left, turning split into elbow strike. Then we have press, flexion of the active hip, upper waist turning away from the active hip, lower waist turning towards the active hip. Then we have push again, which we create by extending the previously flexed left hip. And then we have push down and back, reversing all of the core rotations, and then push up and forward again, reversing all of the core rotations.